Hi, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? Yo estoy un poco enferma. I'm a bit sick. Sorry, I hope I don't lose my voice. I have a cold. So I hope you can hear me well. And today I wanted to talk about a question that I receive quite often, which is how long does it take to reach a certain level of Spanish? It doesn't really depend on age because some people also think, oh, I may be too old to learn. It's true that children learn faster. It's possible that people over maybe 80 years old, they take longer to learn. But does age influence in how adults learn a language? I'll answer with another question. I have had students from like 21 to 46, 47. So who do you think learn faster? The ones who are in their 20s, 30s, or 40s? I leave you a couple of seconds to think. People who are in the 20s learn faster, 30s, 40s. And the answer is the ones who learn faster are the ones who are more motivated. It does not depend on age. Adults, they learn about the same. Either if you are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, 60s, the way of learning is the same. It doesn't depend on age. It depends mostly on motivation. What else? It also depends, of course, on how much time you can study every day. Of course, this is linked to motivation. For example, I have very busy students who never have time to do the homework. And I have very busy students who always do their homework. They always find a little bit of time to do the homework and study Spanish. Also, if you're motivated, you're interested, you will kind of absorb all the knowledge much easier because you're interested. And when you have emotions linked to the learning, that becomes faster. So what else can influence the learning? So if you already have a previous knowledge of another language in the same family, that makes it easier to learn a new language. So in the case of Spanish, the other languages that are in the same family are, for example, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian. So if you have a previous knowledge of one of these languages, you will learn Spanish faster. For example, for me, it was much easier to learn French than to learn Swedish. In general, for German people, it's easier to learn Swedish than it is for Spanish. And on the other way, for Spanish people, it's easier to learn French than it is for German. But does it only depend on similarities of language? Not only. For example, when I was in Argentina, I met a Russian girl, and she had been living in Argentina only for a month. Actually, she first went to Argentina on holidays, she fell in love with a guy, and she decided to move to Argentina. So she quit her job in Russia, moved to Argentina, and I met her when she had been there for only 1 month. She didn't have any previous knowledge of Spanish. She didn't speak any Latin language. But after a month, she could already communicate a little bit in Spanish. Of course, she was immersed. She was living in Argentina. She was listening to Spanish every day. But when I moved to France, I didn't know French, but I had previous knowledge of 2 languages in the same family, who are Spanish and Catalan. So I arrived to France. I knew 2 Latin languages. How much did I know 1 month later? I could only say bonjour. Why? What's the difference between this Russian girl and me? The difference is that this girl, she knew that to live in Argentina, to find a job in Argentina, she had to learn Spanish as fast as possible. On the other hand, I arrived to France with a job. I had a job for 3 years. I had a job at the university where I knew I could communicate in English. So I wasn't in a rush to learn French. I was motivated. I actually went to live in France because I wanted to learn French. But I wasn't in a hurry. I knew I had 3 years to learn. So even if I had this previous knowledge of similar languages, my motivation was lower. And that's why this Russian girl was learning Spanish much faster than I learned French. So that's coming back to motivation. Yes, exactly. What else? Some people also tell me, oh, Laia, but I really find it very hard languages. I think languages are not my thing. So is it true that some people learn languages faster than others? Is it easier for some people to learn languages? I would say yes, most probably yes. Why? Well, there are some people for whom it's easier to learn mathematics. They have a more analytical mind. Some people are very creative and find it easier to do drawings, music. So obviously, some people will have more facility to learn languages. But again, I think that's something we can learn. Everyone can learn mathematics if we really go into it. We can all learn drawing if you try every day. It might take longer, okay? If drawing is easy for if drawing is difficult for me, it might take me a bit longer. But in the long term, I will learn anyway. So we can all learn languages. Some people might learn a bit faster or slower, but it's all about motivation, yes. Finally, one thing that is true is that we don't all learn in the same way. We have different ways of learning. For example, some people learn in what it's called the natural way. That means that only by listening to the language, they kind of get the knowledge and they can learn the language, which is actually the way we all learn our first language, our mother tongue. We all learn just by listening and then we start speaking. So some people can do that also when they are adults. Other people, on the other hand, prefer and need to understand how the language works. They need to understand the grammar. I'm in the second group. For me, it's easier to learn a language if I understand how it works, if I know the grammar. I cannot learn only by listening. Some people can, but I cannot. I need to understand how the language works. So what I recommend you is that you know which kind of learner you are. If you're more creative, if you learn in a more natural way, or if you need to understand the language, because then you can choose the method that will be better for you to learn the language. For example, I've met people who, in fact, learn a language only by speaking to people. When I was in Laos, I was in a really small, remote village in Laos with, imagine, like wooden and bamboo houses, no roads, no electricity network, no internet. And there was this man who was renting a couple of rooms in his house, and he could speak English. He didn't have a perfect English. His grammar was not perfect, but he could communicate. Actually, he told us very interesting things about the history of Laos. So he could communicate, but he didn't have internet. He didn't have English books. How did he learn English? He learned only by talking to tourists. So, was it easy for this man to learn English? I have no idea. But what is sure is that he was very motivated to learn English. So I think that the most important factor to learn a language is motivation. All the other factors will have an influence, of course, but the most important thing is motivation. So know why you're learning Spanish, find your motivation, and you will see how things are easier and more fun. So that's everything I wanted to tell you today. I'm actually losing my voice. So we will continue next week with more ideas, more energy, and more learning. Have a great weekend and see you next week. Bye.